Morning everybody, Silbot here, or afternoon depending on when this gets uploaded. Silbot here, back for a video, and it's on the one that I said in my last video, which was why I dislike the Big Bang Theory. For those of you who don't know, Big Bang Theory is a sitcom focusing on a cast of now 7, who are all, well, 5 of them are, 4 of them are geeks, nerds, and stereotypes. Now, it has to be said that the Big Bang Theory is probably only as successful as it is due to things like the success of films like the MCU, which has really catapulted geekdom into much more mainstream media. I mean, if you look at geeks in movies and TV shows prior to this, they're usually relegated to the role of sidekick or know-it-all exposition character. And even looking at such geek culture shows such as Buffy, when you had the trio, who were before that were portrayed, and even up until the point, where Warren kills Tara, they are portrayed as rather pathetic and very nerdy, and, well, look at the episode with the mind control device. And, tend to be objects of scorn until they get taken seriously. And even then, Jonathan and Andrew are never really taken that seriously. Only Warren. But there we go. So the Big Bang Theory, when it first hit our screens, was 4 geeks/nerds, very intelligent, and it was about their misadventures. And I, like many others, really enjoyed it. And I laughed along with their misadventures, and I'm nodding in understanding at some of their situations when it first came out. But recently, as I've started rewatching it, I find myself amongst a growing number of people who really dislike it. I mean, it was one of the TV shows that I used to binge watch while painting with Philly and Adam back when I was still living in England. But now, well, there are a lot of problems with this show. An awful lot of problems. And a lot of it stems from the writing and the way the characters are portrayed. Chuck Lorre's other kind of fame, I believe, was 2.5 Men. So, Charlie Sheen's character. But, we'll get at that. I think the easy way to do this one is to go through some of the situations, but also to go through the characters. So let's take a look on a brief setting of the 7 principal characters of the Big Bang Theory. And we'll start with the men, and we'll start with the obvious one, Sheldon. Yes, the one that, like Starscream and Christian Grey, people inexplicably love, despite the fact that in many regards he is horrible. Sheldon is, of course, genius-level intelligence with an eidetic memory. And he's almost certainly on the autism Asperger's scale to some level of degree. At what point, you can figure out yourself. Coupled with that, he's also narcissistic with a severe lack of empathy and, frankly, doesn't really care about anything other than himself. He is abusive, and he is downright cruel. And whilst his character has certainly gone through development over the course of the series, a lot of the early series do focus on, and a lot of the jokes end up being delivered by Sheldon, who of course does have a sense of humour, but his sense of humour is usually derived from other people's expense and misfortune. And yet somehow he's become one of the favourites. Sheldon's obviously has OCD, hence the ongoing constant joke, which is understandable, seeing it's a trait of OCD, of penny, penny, penny whilst knocking 3 times, his obsessive cleaning, his utter phobia of germs, and of being sick. And when the fact that he does actually get sick, he turns into a total crybaby. Every illness he has him utterly dilapidated and just useless and can't function in any way. And Sheldon, of course, can't function in normal society. It takes very much the tolerance of his friends to keep him going. And, you know, he purposefully sabotages things to make outcomes favourable to him. The only one of Leonard's partners that he's ever agreed with was Stephanie, and that's because she was a doctor, so she was up there with his level of intelligence to some degree, because of course, you know, obviously Sheldon is a doctor. And Sheldon, of course, has a very troubled childhood. Now, this is nothing new. It's an ongoing theme that the characters all had troubled childhoods. He comes from, despite the fact that his mother is very loving and very caring, his father, of course, was an abusive drunk. The arguments that they had before the father left was that, or died. Mine's drawn a blank at that one now. Was that it very much gave Sheldon a fear of confrontation, despite the fact that he constantly does things that would drive any normal person to confront him. He is very derisive of people who he believes to not be of equal level of intelligence to himself. And yet it goes beyond that, which is something I will mention when I discuss some of the situations that happen in the Big Bang Theory. So, yeah, Sheldon. Not exactly a nice, normal person, but there we go. Let's talk about the ethnic minority of the group in the form of Raj Kutapalli. And Raj's thing, of course, is that he has selective mutism. That's his quirk, because all these characters have to have quirky traits. Quirky traits, FYI, is usually an example of lazy screenwriting, but there we go. And that is a joke that is played out for, 5 series? Before it inexplicably cures itself. Raj is very much presented as a spoiled child. Of all the ones growing up, he probably had the least bad childhood of the lot. He comes from a very affluent family. Father is a gynecologist and has an overly bearing, domineering mother, which is probably the reason that they give, for his selective mutism that is randomly cured at the end of season 5. Was it season 5 or season 6? I can't quite remember which season it was. And to be fair, I don't really have a problem with the fact that it was just inexplicably solved, because as far as I'm concerned, that joke had been run pretty much as far as it was going to go. There wasn't really anything else they could do with Raj's character in the form of the selective mutism. Obviously, he comes from a very privileged background. The problem with Raj's character is that he's just an out-and-out twat. You know, give the man a drink, which is the initial joke, the only way you can actually talk to him, and he just becomes this arrogant, self-absorbed, out-for-himself bully. But it's always played down. I mean, as the characters go, Raj is probably the least offensive of the lot. But, you know, it's always played down. Then, of course, you've got this ongoing joke of, you know, maybe he's gay, maybe he's not, and he's obsessing over all these women just purely because he's overcompensating. Which, I'm not worried about that one. I mean, bear in mind in Friends that at one point they were going to make Chandler gay anyway. They were going to write it in that he comes out at some point. And on one hand, Raj is probably one of the ones that's a bit more balanced of all the group. But then when you put a drink in his hand, and he just becomes this colossal jerk who puts down his friends, is incredibly misogynistic towards women, and he's uncomfortable to watch at times. And whilst he is obviously a very good cook, he's a very good planner, he has a job as an astrophysicist, but he has a constant need for validation through women. And he's the only one, of course, by season 7 an 8 that doesn't have a partner. I mean, the guy forms an emotional attachment to his phone. This is a guy who is so desperate to be in a loving relationship, to feel loved, that he forms an anthropomorphic attachment to his dog. And, you know, I'm a dog lover. Don't get me wrong, I love my boys. Wouldn't be without them, but I wouldn't bleed and dress them up and put them in a trolley in a baby cart and push them round. So, of all the characters, I'd say Raj, at least to me in certain regards, is the least offensive of the lot. Not really a bonus point in his favour, but there we go. Okay, Howard. Now, if Raj is the least offensive, Howard, in some regards, is the most offensive. If this was an episode, bear in mind, The Big Bang Theory is a PG-13 or, you know, mostly child-friendly, light-hearted sitcom. If this was an episode of Dexter, he'd be strapped to the frigging table. Howard is a deplorable human being. He is a sexual predator in a universal rating world. The things that he does are just beyond compare. Okay, yeah, you know, again, he comes from a broken home. He has a father who left him, and he has those abandonment issues, and he has an overbearing mother. And yet, as much as he always gives out and bitches about his mother, he still lets her do absolutely everything for her, whilst at the same time putting her down. And his character is dangerous. If this was a more mature rated sitcom, Howard is the guy who dragged women down dark alleys. He has a sense of entitlement that, to be fair, is quite prevalent amongst certain cultural norms. That, you know, he's owed sex by women. He jumps on anything that gives him the slightest bit of attention. Look how he treats, again, we'll go back to Stephanie. Look how he treats Stephanie. He instantly latches on, he's instantly clingy. He breaks into and crashes the Mars friggin' rover in an effort to get sex. And this is supposed to be funny. Howard is not funny. Howard is creepy as hell. We'll get more into what Howard does when we get to some of the situations they find themselves in. Howard is a sexual predator. He even says it as a point of pride at one point where he's going out after Valentine's Day to pick up the emotionally vulnerable ones. Even when he later gets a girlfriend, Bernadette, it then shows that he is horrendously insecure and controlling about her when she strikes up a friendship with Leonard. Now, admittedly, in his favour, he does actually later come back and apologise for that. But still, he is cruel beyond compare to his mother. He's constantly putting her down. All she does is love him. Okay, her love is overbearing. But he does nothing to change the dynamic. They're both equally to blame for it. Her for being overbearing and him for letting it happen. And again, it's played for laughs. And that seems to be the ongoing theme with the Big Bang Theory, is that it's played for laughs. All these situations which are depressing, cruel, spiteful, are played off as a joke. Howard is a dangerous individual because his sense of entitlement, coupled with his raging hormones and inability to keep it in his pants. I mean, when it comes to sex, Howard has no morals. You know, when they go to Las Vegas, I know I didn't want to put this in an example, but it's one that's just popped into my head, or wherever it is they go. Do they go to Las Vegas or do they go to Atlantic City? No, Atlantic City is How I Met Your Mother. When they go to Vegas, Leonard and Raj get Howard a prostitute. That's no moral distinctions. And, you know, they're worried that Howard's not going to like the fact that they're paying for sex. Howard has no problem with it. Because at the end of the day, he's getting sex. It just goes to show you his lack of depth and the levels he will sink to in order to get laid. And the way he does things is predatory. Now, if you take another popular character when it comes to sitcoms in the form of Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother, and Barney is a pickup artist, and you know he's well off, he's charming, he's always well dressed, he's good looking. But in saying that, Barney Stinson strikes out an awful lot more than he does actually get with women. And yet, we later learn through the character development that Barney is actually a very lonely individual. His need for promiscuity is not only coming from a fear of commitments, but a fear of people who don't get him. And we learn that through the feelings that he does feel a little bit, because he's the social outcast in his group, mainly because of his own actions. But he does feel very, very alone an awful lot of the time. We learn that in later episodes when he drops the facade and realises, you know, Barney is at heart a caring person. And the pickup artist is more of a persona. It's a charade. Not to mention, it's also really, really over-the-top shenanigans, like the Mrs. Stinsfire or the Old Man from the Future, which I have to admit, I really did laugh at that one. You know, his character actually gains development from the first series to however many it ran for before they jumped the flaming shark. But Howard has the opposite. Instead of, you know, being incredible, instead of having a fear of commitment, Howard longs for it. And he goes completely over the top with it, to the point that it is, you know, when he gets the tattoos in an effort he's a sexual predator. And the only reason he's not portrayed as an actual sexual predatory with severe entitlement issues is because it's a family-friendly sitcom. So we come on to Leonard. And Leonard, in some regards, is one of the worst of the offenders in this show. Because Leonard doesn't have the excuse that he's socially unaware. Leonard is the relatable one. He's the one that we're supposed to go, oh my God, at. When he goes, oh my God, what are you doing? Because he knows what is happening. And he knows that the situations that he and his friends are getting involved in are wrong, but he goes along with them anyway. Instead of actually standing his ground and saying, no, we're not doing this, he goes along with it. Like, take very early on in the episode, I think was it episode 2 of season 1, where they clean Penny's apartment. He knows it's wrong. He knows what they're doing is really, really, really bad. And yet he does it anyway. Instead of taking Sheldon by the ear and dragging him out, he goes along with it. And why? Because Leonard's quirk is that he is the nice guy internet white knight stereotype whose wank fantasy has come true. Of landing the hot chick. Hot chick, quotation commas. Because he is the trope of the nice guy who thinks that the only way to get with a woman is to be, instead of treating her like a person, act like a loyal little lapdog, do everything she does until she finally rewards you by putting out. That is Leonard's thing. He's the nice guy. And of course, because he eventually gets with Penny, he's the nice guy who got out of the friend zone, which doesn't exist. Again, we come back to the awkward childhood. Leonard's childhood is actually very, very sad, because he comes from a family, well, at least an overbearing matriarchal mother who does not show him anything resembling affection. Didn't do it to his father either. Didn't do it with his father either. So Leonard grew up as not only a social outcast as a child, the same way that Sheldon did, but also very misappropriate of love. And, they make a joke of it in that it should have been Sheldon who was the child of Leonard's mother, rather than Leonard, because his mother has absolutely no understanding. And again, that's a side character that comes into occasionally. That is horrible. She's a horrible person. So Leonard's character is that he's the internet white knight who gets the girl. And he does it in every stereotypical nice guy way possible. He basically badgers her down. He badgers her down. He wears her down until she goes into it. Which I suppose, and whilst Leonard is the kind of person who would do anything for his friends, he is the one that does have the most redeemable qualities. You can't hide away from the fact that this supposedly relatable character's real only method of getting with the woman that he's in love with is wait till she notices him. Which she eventually does, which segues nicely into the next character, Penny. Now, when we're first introduced to Penny, she is presented as the most atypical pretty girl going. She's an aspiring actress working as a waitress who can somehow afford that nice apartment on a waitress's wages. And, she's the socially aware one who thinks that these four men, well, the two men that live across the way from her and their two associated friends, are a bit nerdy, are very nerdy, very quirky, don't really understand. And yet she's the character that gets put down against the most. She is, her sexual promiscuity is, instead of it being said, look, it's her body, it's her choice, it's constantly played off for laughs. Penny goes, in some regards, from being this confident, outgoing person, though she does have self-esteem issues, into being very unhealthily attached to the men that live across the hall. I mean, she starts out quite early on in the series as having an awful lot of normal friends. But over the course of maybe 2 seasons, totally becomes dependent on the group who live across the hall. A lot of Penny's situations are played for laughs. And as the series goes on, the situations that Penny finds herself in, that Leonard tries to extricate herself, the very first episode where they try to get her TV back and Sheldon and Leonard end up without any pants. Yeah. As, a victim of misfortune in some regards. And then, as time goes on, she becomes a lot more dependent almost on the group. Again, has a troubled upbringing. This is a running theme with the entire show. In that she's got father issues, daddy issues, which was diagnosed by Leonard's mother. And it could be suggested that she's got a drinking problem because she binge drinks an awful lot. And she has an addictive personality, as per the episode we see where she becomes addicted to Agent Conan. And she somehow goes from all of this, from dating meatheads to dating the geeky kid in school. It's every 15-year-old's dream come true. The hot cheerleader chick notices the nerdy guy. Penny and Leonard's relationship, of course, then has to go through has to go and have the Ross and Rachel treatment from Friends. So the other two characters were introduced a fair bit later into the series, and that was Bernadette and Amy. Now, Bernadette is the quiet but crazy type who eventually marries Howard, which certainly shows that she's got some severe psychological problems in herself, because there is no way that any woman in her right mind would date Howard. Obviously very intelligent, but can be quite the competitive, mean person when she wants to be as well. there's not an awful lot more I can say about Bernadette, because while she stands out, while she is her own character, she's not really bad in any particular way. Apart from that, all of a sudden, as the relationship goes, she becomes more and more like Howard's mother. Hey ho, mommy issues. Comedy! And then we come to Amy. And Amy has to be the most tragic of all of them. Again, very intelligent, but is very emotionally stunted. As a result of never having friends when she grew up. And she even says, this was, she really missed having friends because she never had any when she was growing up. Which is fair enough, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way. That's one way. That's fair enough. But her character is tragic. She is so desperate for attention. She is so needed to feel loved and valued that she throws herself in with Sheldon Cooper. And the shaming, my God, it's a PG-13 version of 50 Shades of Grey. It's an emotionally abusive relationship that nobody should be in. But we'll cover that in a bit. Amy's character is not so much a bad character as she is. They take the flaws in her character and the emotional and mental issues that she has and plays it off as a joke. That's not fair. That's bad writing. Amy is... she's a sad representation of somebody who has real issues that's played off for a laugh. Now, I'm not talking the... Howard's predatorism that's played off for a laugh, because each one of these has very serious dysfunctional personalities that are played for comedic factor. But to me, I think Amy's is the most tragic because she's the character that you feel the most sorry for. She's utterly starved of affection her whole life. And then she starts dating somebody who is abusive in his lack of affection. Who puts conditions on her, who treats her appallingly. And yet her own lack of self-esteem and her own lack of self-worth has her coming back for more time and time and time again. And her friends, instead of turning around going, you should leave him, which is what any normal if one of my friends came up to me and said, I'm in a relationship with Sheldon Cooper, I would tell her to get the hell out of there. Because the relationship between Sheldon and Amy is abusive. It is emotional abuse. Amy is the character that I actually feel the most sorry for. She's the most physically unattractive, obviously attraction is subjective, who has chronically low self-esteem, who doesn't actually hide that, who, unlike you could argue that Penny has low self-esteem, at least she hides it and tries to manage it. Amy wears it on her sleeve. Because one of the ironies is that the actress who plays Amy Farrah Fowler is actually not that unattractive. But it's all done with makeup and clothing and lighting to make it appear that she is more unattractive than she actually is. But hey, look, there we go. And her character is tortured. Now, this is one of the things that really, really, really put me off The Big Bang Theory, is the treatment of Amy, not just by Sheldon, but by the others as well. Yeah, Amy comes on very, very strong. The painting incident with Penny, for instance. Until they actually try to seclude her. And Amy's the one that that group bullies. Maybe not intentionally, but she's the one that they bully. She's the one that they treat really, really badly. My God, this video's already ran for half an hour. Okay? That's done on the characters. I'm going to stop this now, and I'm going to upload a second part in regards to the situations. I didn't actually expect it to run for this long. But yes, join me very soon. I'll probably upload them one after another, actually, for Why I Dislike the Big Bang Theory Part 2.